MTC. Q-10 number 1. At Metro Bank we try to provide banking facilities of the highest quality in order to accurately meet our customers' needs. Metro Bank. To do this it is essential that we listen to what our customers have to say. We would like you to help us by giving us your opinion of Metro Bank's services. Metro Bank. We are asking an independent market research company, MIC Limited, to interview a number of customers over the next few weeks. MIC Limited. MIC Limited is a reliable company, and your individual responses will be kept completely confidential. MIC Limited. They will be conducting the interviews by telephone, so an interviewer may telephone you at some point over the next few weeks. Because MIC Limited will choose who to interview, you might not be contacted at all. MIC Limited. If you are, we would value your contribution and hope you will be able to help us if asked. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Q-10 number 2. The answer to the question about the fading of color in painting, and in fabric, is fairly simple. Ultraviolet radiation is a high-energy form of light and, as sunbathers are only too aware, is present in ordinary daylight. Over time, ultraviolet radiation can gradually break up the molecules in pigment, leaving smaller, colorless molecules as products. There is also a second process of degradation in which pigment molecules may react chemically with oxygen molecules in the atmosphere, a process known as oxidation. 2. As with photolysis, this alters the structure of the molecule and, as a consequence, changes the manner in which it absorbs light of various colors. As the amount of colored pigment in a given area on a canvas gradually diminishes, so the color seems to us, as onlookers, to fade. So a given pigment doesn't actually change color, it simply becomes weaker in the mix of pigments over time. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Q-10 number 3. The intense tropical sunlight warms the air, and tropical latitudes are characterized by warm temperatures. Since day length is more or less constant through the tropical year, there is relatively little fluctuation in temperatures through the year. Those of us who live in the temperate zones are accustomed to heat waves during the summer and cold spells during the winter, both of which are consequences of varying day lengths. The long summer days heat the air, and if the air is stagnant, this heat accumulates and can't be lost during the short nights. The everlasting darkness in the Arctic region during the northern winters allows ample opportunity for air to lose its heat, and when this frigid air pushes into our more temperate latitudes it can cause devastating cold spells. But in the tropics the uniformity of day length means that there are no such opportunities for heat to build up or be lost. Although there may be seasonal fluctuations in temperature, they tend to be minor. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Q-10 number 4. To know whether an artistic performance succeeds or fails requires that we know what counts as success or failure in any performance context. Music critics will consider a pianist's tone, phrasing, tempo, accuracy, and ability to sustain a line or build to a climax. Speed and brilliance may be important considerations, which is not to say the fastest performance will be the best. But behind these considerations is an unstated assumption, that it is one person's 10 unaided fingers that produce the sounds. The excitement a virtuoso pianist generates with a glittering shower of notes is intrinsically connected with this fact. An orally identical experience that is electronically synthesized can never dazzle us in the same way. Sound synthesizers can produce individual notes as fast as you please, while pianists cannot. Built into the thrill of hearing a virtuoso is admiration for what the performance represents as a human achievement. Forgery and other forms of fakery in the arts misrepresent the nature of the performance and so misrepresent achievement. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Q-10 number 5. The tourism sector's reaction to climate change has involved two different but related responses, Mitigation and adaptation strategies. Mitigation refers to attempts to reduce the impact of tourism on climate change, while adaptation refers to attempts to adapt tourism to climate changes and minimize climate change risks. The tourism sector will also need to make adaptations in response to national mitigation strategies related to greenhouse gas emissions, hence the concepts are related. For instance, as a sector totally reliant on transport, national and international mitigation policies related to greenhouse gas emissions are likely to increase costs of transport and impact tourism mobility. There are implications for slow travel, which emphasizes traveling to destinations more slowly and staying longer in one place rather than cramming in as many places as possible in a short space of time. For example, it could be argued that slow travel should become a major mitigation response, as part of a cultural change associated with travel and trip distance reduction. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Q-10 number 6. Some prominent journalists say that archaeologists should work with treasure hunters because treasure hunters have accumulated valuable historical artifacts that can reveal much about the past. But archaeologists are not asked to cooperate with tomb robbers, who also have valuable historical artifacts. The quest for profit and the search for knowledge cannot coexist in archaeology because of the time factor. Rather incredibly, an archaeologist employed by a treasure hunting firm said that as long as archaeologists are given 6 months to study shipwrecked artifacts before they are sold, no historical knowledge is lost. 6. On the contrary, archaeologists from the INA, Institute of Nautical Archaeology, needed more than a decade of year-round conservation before they could even catalogue all the finds from an 11th century AD wreck they had excavated. 1110. Then, to interpret those finds, they had to learn Russian, Bulgarian, and Romanian, without which they would never have learned the true nature of the site. Could a commercial archaeologist have waited more than a decade or so before selling the finds? 10. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Q-10 number 7. Although individual incentives may increase the effort of the individual group members, and thus enhance group performance, they also have some potential disadvantages for group process. One potential problem is that the group members will compare their own rewards with those of others. It might be hoped that individuals would use their co-workers as models, upward comparison, which would inspire them to work harder. For instance, when corporations set up Employee of the Week programs, they are attempting to develop this type of positive comparison. On the other hand, if group members believe that others are being rewarded more than they are for what they perceive as the same work, downward comparison, they may change their behavior to attempt to restore equity. Perhaps they will attempt to work harder in order to receive greater rewards for themselves. But they may instead decide to reduce their effort to match what they perceive as a low level of current pay. It has been found, for instance, that job absenteeism is increased when employees make unfavorable comparisons between their own rewards and those of others. Although individual incentives have potential advantages, perceived inequity among employees may diminish the effect of motivating them to work harder. MTC. Good job.